Hello, welcome back to the channel, and I'm here with my first prediction for a fight. I've been talking about doing them since I started this little series on the channel, and I'm finally getting around to doing it. And who better than Israel Adesanya and Dricus Plessis, if you think about it really. I'm going to start by going through each of their last fights, which happens to both be against Sean Strickland, which I know MMA maths doesn't work in terms of he beat him, so he should beat him because he lost to him. I know it doesn't work like that, and styles do make fights, but I feel like it's a good gauge how they both performed, where Strickland found success against both of them, and can the other person replicate that success. So I just want to talk, before I go into that fight, just about these two leading up to the fight. Now, Izzy's coming off the longest layoff he's ever had in the UFC. It's about 11 months, almost a year. You can look at sort of two ways. You can either look at, he had a pretty poor performance last time. You can't debate that. He did underperform last time out. Now, you can either look at this long layoff as he's been fighting too much before it, so he was maybe a little bit burnt out, and now he's had some time out. He's going to be a lot more fresh, maybe a bit more hungry, that he's sort of seen the life he has without fighting, and now he wants to come back and take what's his. Or you're going to look at it as he was poor before, when he would have been at potentially his sharpest because he was most active. Now he's come from this long layoff. We've seen with other fighters, a long layoff really, really hinders their performance in the ring, namely Conor McGregor. In terms of Dricus Plessis, well, the first time I'd heard of him, and I think the same for most people, is when he fought Darren Till. And it was kind of this moment of, we've lost Darren Till. And that was, I believe, Darren Till's last year. And in terms of that, Till, what gets him into the title fight is that knockout win over Robert Whittaker, which was elite. No one was backing him to beat that. It was, alright, Whittaker gets done with this, and then it's the trilogy fight with Adesanya. Everyone was overlooking Plessis. And then in terms of Plessis, he won the title. This will be his first defense. He had a pretty controversial win, in my opinion. It was a split decision, so it was a very close fight, and a lot of people felt Sean won it. I've just watched it back now, or at least the highlights, and I can see why both sides think they won it, and it is subjective judges scoring. It was a tough decision, whereas Izzy against Strickland wasn't particularly close. There's obviously been a lot of words exchanged, a lot of real beef between these two, sort of in terms of their heritage, shall we say. I don't want to go too deeply into it because I want to just focus on the fight. There is bad blood between these two, to put it mildly. We'll start with Izzy versus Strickland being the challenger, the man who will get in the cage first. And I've just made some notes round by round. I'll go through them quite quickly, give an overall summary of the fight, then move on to Dricus. So the first round, he was way too defensive, and I think this is pretty common throughout the entire fight. Way too defensive. Let Strickland lead. He kept trying essentially what he did against Pereira, which fair play, it worked against Pereira, but it obviously didn't work here. He would get his back against the cage, a very high guard, and he would look for that counter shot. But he wasn't really going for the counter, and when he did, it was going for a hook, which he is known for. He knocked out Whittaker with a hook, he knocked down Costa with a hook. He has got very good hooks. However, the rule in boxing is straight beat hooks, and that's because hooks, obviously, you've got much further to go. So if you throw a straight as someone throws a hook, the straight lands first, and that's exactly what happened in that first round. Izzy throws the hook. He is known for having a bit of a high chin, open for straight shots and overhands, and this time it does land from Strickland. He drops him. He does really well to recover and to defend. He goes down, he gets up pretty quickly. He does take a lot of shots. We know he's got a very good chin. Now, round two was his best round in this fight. I think it's the only round where you can confidently say he won it. He did look better. He did look like he was trying to get back at Sean, trying to prove he's got the power that Sean does. And that's when he was going forward the most. And Izzy is very skillful at going backwards in a fight and picking his shots, but I don't think he capitalizes on him going forward enough, because he is very effective. In the first Pereira fight and in this round, in this fight, his best moments were coming forward. But obviously his counter-punching and his going back and his long kicks are what he's known for. So I understand why he doesn't use it as much, but I think it could throw his opposition off if he's coming forward and backwards, make them second guess a little bit more. And going forward, it's harder to get taken down, which I'll get to when we get to Dricus. His leg kicks, which he's known for, were pretty poor. They were ineffective. They were out of range. They were still quite quick. They looked, but Sean was just able to quickly move his leg out the way to evade them, to check them. He was able to catch some of his body kicks. It didn't look like the Israel Adesanya we know. Now that could be down to Sean, that could be down to burnout, like I've said before, or he could just be getting on and all the fights and wars he's been in are starting to catch up to him. Third fight, again, Sean was just too elusive, which is crazy considering that Adesanya's the one who's known for being elusive. He couldn't really land, and I think the knockdown had it in his head a little bit because he didn't follow up on opportunities where Sean's chin was in the air, where he could have thrown that overhand, which he was looking for clearly in the first round. I think maybe he was a little bit in his own head of, if I throw this and I miss, I could get countered again, and another moment like that could be the end of the fight for me. The fourth round, Izzy gets hurt again, but it's not to the same degree, but again, he is losing rounds. He seemed reluctant to disrupt Sean's combinations, and what I will say, started in the third and carried on into the fourth and ended in the fifth, obviously. His head movement and his upper body movement, which he uses perfectly in most fights to avoid shots, Sean was able to time it in this fight and was able to land in it. So into this fourth round, rather than trying to evade it and get a counter off, he seemed to just stand there with, again, like I said, a high guard and just wait for the punches to stop and the kicks to stop, which you're just going to lose rounds that way. You won't necessarily get as hurt, but you're going to lose rounds that way. And especially when you're probably a round down. Izzy should know at this point from his corner talking to him and from his general fight knowledge that he's down and that he needs to do something. And just standing there taking combinations isn't going to win you fights. Now, the end of the fifth round was bad. You see Sean talking to him, showboating him, and Izzy's just walking back, throwing a couple jabs, a couple body kicks. He didn't really go for it, and at that point, he definitely should know, I'm losing this fight. Just take a risk, because your championship is on the line, and your legacy is on the line. And at this point, he's lost 2 of his last 4 fights, and if he loses this one, it will be losing 3 of his last 4. So just sort of to sum up the whole fight, in my opinion, Izzy was too defensive, didn't counter enough, and he didn't look as quick or as sharp as he has done before. Now we're going to move on to Dricus versus Sean, which was a much closer fight. The first round, you see Dricus putting Sean on the back foot more, which I'm imagining we're going to see a lot of in this fight. I'm imagining Izzy is going to be on the back foot, back against the cage, like he normally does, and Dricus is going to be moving forward, which, like I've said, I would like to see Izzy take some more initiative and stick it on him just that little bit more, because obviously Dricus does like his takedowns. I was looking at his stats, and he doesn't offer much submissions. It was 0.8 submissions per 15 minutes, so every 3 round fights. So most fights, he will attempt 1 submission. He lands 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he has about a 51% takedown accuracy and a 40% takedown defense. It does show you that he will use wrestling, and Izzy has been shown to be pretty good at defending takedowns, in my opinion. But with Izzy going on the back foot, that makes takedowns easier than if he was on the front foot. So, like I said, I'd like to see Izzy go forward a little bit more. But like I said, no real submission offense from Dricus. He's a lot less of a technical striker than both Izzy and Sean. He does look to counterpunch, and it is a lot often wild, forced engagements. That's what I got from especially the second and the third round. And in those rounds, especially the second and the fourth, when he does manage to get Sean down, he might have got him down in the third, but I can't remember it happening. He doesn't do well at holding Sean down. He does manage to get the takedown, but Sean is quite easy to get to the cage and use the cage to get back up and get into a clinch and then separate, and then it's back to striking. So that's going to be something that Izzy should be quite comfortable with in terms of if he does manage to take me down, which I can see happening, but also I can see pretty good defense from Adesanya, I can get back up pretty comfortably. And he was talking about trying to submit Robert Whittaker. Maybe even if he goes for a submission on that first takedown attempt, you could then have Dricus second-guessing taking him down, thinking, I could get submitted here. Just a thought that I'm going to put out there. And in the fourth, you can very clearly see that Dricus is willing to take a shot in order to give a couple. And he will force engagements. He will run in and throw punches. And this is what we saw with Robert Whittaker in their first fight. Now, I'm wondering if Izzy is at a higher level than he was against Sean. That's something he can capitalise on with the counter punches, straights and hooks, and landing while Dricus is on his way in. He does have pretty good defence. He does normally have his backhand on the chin when he's throwing that jab, and the other one, but he does keep his hands quite low in normal engagements. It's when he comes in that his hands go up, which is pretty good if you're Izzy, because then you kind of know when he's going to come in because his hands will go up. It's a lot easier to read him, and he knows to throw that counter. Now, he was left open on multiple occasions in round 4. I'm wondering if that's fatigue, because there has been question marks over his gas tank in the past. A strategy could be trying to get it to the later rounds if you're Adesanya, trying to make him work in those first 2 rounds, and when it gets to those later rounds when his gas tank's lower, that's when you can start to pick him apart, because that is, in my opinion, when he's the most open to strikes. And the shots that were working well for Sean were actually the overhands, which Izzy was looking for against Sean, and they were similar sort of shots that what landed and knocked out Pereira. Later in the rounds, he will get more gassed, and therefore he won't be able to take as many shots, he won't be able to defend as many shots, and therefore he's more likely to get knocked out. He does, like you see a lot in the later rounds, put everything into each shot, so if he does land, it's gonna hurt. You know, it's not like some fighters will flick a jab or a kick or just to kind of get their range, keep you at bay. No, he puts his full body weight behind every kick, every punch, which gives you a good opportunity in terms of landing hard shots, but you're kind of told, especially if someone's going backwards, you're kind of taught, take a little bit off each punch because you'll lure them into a false sense of security of being able to take your power. So, for example, if you throw a 1-2 at, say, 30% power, and then maybe at 50% power, your opponent is then overconfident in their ability to take your power. So then they start moving forward, they start taking more risks, and that's when you'll maybe hit 70, 80, 90% of your power, and that's what will hurt them and potentially knock them down and lead to a finish. He has the gas to go all 5 rounds at a pretty high intensity, I would say, in that fight, but he did look very fatigued. Now, a fight against Izzy a lot of times is quite a bit slower than a fight against Sean. Sean puts it on you a lot more than Izzy does. The speed of the fight in terms of upping it will be determined if Dricus can up the fight intensity. To sum up everything I've thrown at you in terms of Dricus, he's going to try and take him down at some point. He doesn't hold Sean down particularly well. He will try and counterpunch. He will try and force engagements. They will be quite wild, but quite powerful. And he does tend to fade and lose his technique in the later rounds. So that has been my analysis of their last 2 fights. Now I'm going to get into my final prediction. In my opinion, peak for peak, Izzy is significantly better than Dricus. However, the Dricus versus Sean fight was a lot closer. And like I've said, MMA maths doesn't exactly correlate. So it doesn't mean that because Dricus was better against Sean than Izzy was, Dricus will beat Izzy. However, that being said, if Izzy turns up the way he did against Sean, I think he will struggle. He needs to have the confidence in his ability to land during Dricus's combinations, because that is when he is the most vulnerable and the most open to a knockout. I do believe Izzy will win this fight. I think he has every tool to win this fight. And my official prediction is Izzy by stoppage after round 4. That's my official prediction. Let me know what you think will happen in the comments down below. Please feel free and make sure to like and subscribe to this channel. We're going for 100 subscribers as quick as possible. And thank you all for all the recent support on my last videos, the last 2 in particular. And I'll see you in the next one, which should be a review of this fight where I'm hoping Izzy becomes a 3-time champion of the world.